Good morning, everyone. So the big Apple earnings are out, and Apple's up sharply. Of course, you probably already know that. Um, but the markets, while up here, what is it? The NQs are up 45 points, but in relation, it's like a yuan with the size of the move in Apple. This move that I've been explaining, the extent of these prior moves, 7%, about 6%, 7%. And in addition to, I've told you about, sentiment being at a bearish extreme, too many option traders betting that the market's going to blast to the upside. Typically doesn't happen. When too many are on one side of the boat, so to speak. Breath got slightly overbought. So we had a little minor, I would say minor type of a sell signal here where these were in alignment, but the breath didn't get that far, and it's been correcting here for a period of time. And breath is still, while it's starting to work its way off here, it's coming out of that extreme. The markets really haven't done much of anything. I mean, they haven't corrected it as far as prices pulling back. Anyway, getting a sideways type of correction here. You can see the overnight, the pop up on the Apple News and just sideways here. It's got room to go higher. Here's the concept of the wide range bar, creating a momentum move and a void on a smaller time frame. So there's an air pocket, so to speak, here. And this has been building up a sloppy type of a base. And the question is, can it get going here? Well, it's not going to do it with Apple all by itself. And there isn't much of anything else that's really moving here this morning. Let's keep that in mind. The S&Ps are up about 2.5 here. But just still going sideways, uptrend, as I've already mentioned yesterday, uptrend, sideways correction. So bullish, but hasn't been able to get out of this range to the upside. And it came to the downside here when you got a bottoming tail, so buyers stepped up on that dip, which is a positive event. And, you can see where the opens and closes are. They're up near the top of the range, so still bullish price action. Correcting sideways in light of this extreme in sentiment being bearish. And the Dow goes it alone, meaning it had this, and this could be another tell of the end of this, ascent, this uptrend. And that isn't to say that, some big correction is coming. However, when you see prices begin to accelerate like this, and this tail at the top here, I believe, is a bad tick, meaning it's an erroneous move here in the chart, so that's not real. You have a little narrow range bodied bar there, and you can see on the intraday chart this little sideways action here. But when you see prices accelerate to the upside in a fluid way, meaning the opens and the closes are next to each other, and then each bar continues to move to the upside, where it gets far from the moving average, far from price support, which is the real key. The moving average is just a visual aid. So prices are getting far from any price support, which opens up the door for a larger pullback. Now, that being said, the pullback would be to what we call minor support, which is still okay if it was to pull back here. Now, it shouldn't pull back there if this strength is not a blow-off type of a move or a climactic kind of a move ending an uptrend. Meaning this type of strong move typically does not pull back to minor support. Rather, it might pull back to where these opens and closes are slightly overlapping each other. So, if you look through the old videos, a lot of them have these type of lessons that I'm explaining. These opens and closes overlapping each other are going to be a base or a consolidation in a smaller time frame. So that's what we want to look for. So as we look, between the 700 and 800, we should find some kind of a consolidation there. which is kind of here. It's not that tight, but this is where, if prices were to start pulling back, of course, they'd have to break through that intraday support, which it probably would. So here's a tip, intraday support like this becomes less potent, if you will, as a reference point of support when the higher time frame has accelerated in this type of a fashion, meaning it sets up the potential for a pullback because of how fast prices have moved in a short period of time. So that trumps this support, so to speak. Meaning, we all look at support and resistance as technical traders and say, can prices actually get through support because this is in an uptrend? And trend should, mean that it will hold and prices will go higher. However, when you have this type of an acceleration, well, the odds increase that prices can get through here if prices begin to pull back. And I hope that all makes sense. We look at technicals in a systematic way of putting these pieces together, as to say, okay, prices came out of a consolidation that is bullish, suggesting prices would go higher, and any intraday support, we're not looking at that here, but any intraday support, which would be obviously in this area, is going to hold because the breakout happened from a consolidation. Now, this consolidation, sideways action after the breakout, was bullish, bottoming tails, and then prices break out, and this did exactly what it's supposed to do, accelerate to the upside like this. Now, repeating again, if this is as bullish as this move suggests, well, this will have a shallow pullback or go sideways and then continue to go higher. Okay. So here's an example. Sideways consolidation on the weekly chart, wide range bar igniting a move up, and it pushed higher, and rather than pull back, it went sideways. Super bullish price action. This is normal type of a correction. The angle of retracement back down toward the rising 20 MA, normal type of retracement. Okay, but a little bit more of a corrective or fearful type of a correction versus a very bullish correction sideways, where this tells us that investors, traders are confident and they're buying minor dips versus, hey, this has moved a bit too far, too fast. I want to wait for this to have a deeper pullback and I'm willing to buy here. And now prices are beginning to accelerate higher. And that typically comes at the end of a move, in short term, and could be intermediate term. Okay, let's take a look at Apple. So, here was an angle of retracement that was very sharp, and again here. So this is a normal type of corrective action after this type of angle of retracement, which begins to rebuild and repair the damage. Now, we would anticipate it to do that type of similar corrective action, but you've got the earnings coming out, which is, obviously a game changer, and it was, and now you've got it trading up here, just hitting the 160 level there. So we'll see where this ends and whether it turns out to be a Facebook type of price action, what we call a gap and crap here, which Facebook was advancing into its earnings and gapped up, whereas Apple was just chopping around here. It wasn't advancing, so a bit different. So we wouldn't, see this as having the same type of reaction. Everything is always a bit different. However, it is a big gap. It's clearing this high. It's a new all-time high. So we'll see where this ends up at the end of the day. Other gaps of interest, and I know we're getting a little long in this video here. This one Spark Therapeutic, and I didn't check news. So check on it. Maybe this was earnings, could be something else. I suspect with the name therapeutic, it's a biotech or drug related, but it's a nice gap. around $75, gapping above this high. And I mention it as a potential morning gap play since it's clearing a wide range red bar and gapping above this resistance. That is, gap criteria that we'd be looking for to trade that this morning. Another one is Garmin. Nice gap up and traded up to like 53.75-ish. So up here near this high where it backed off. So this could be a good play. Maybe let it, move back and forth a little bit, and then possibly it could go higher. So when we trade these gaps, we look at, some multiple criteria. But one of the main ones being, is it gapping above resistance or almost all resistance? Is there shock value to the gap? Is it gap up from a green bar or a red bar? And other things that kind of come together to form a checklist, if you will, as to that type of gap and trading it at the open. All right, I've mentioned financials several times. They're looking great. Showed you Citi yesterday. Had a nice day. So these financials, money is definitely flowing into them. There's no doubt about it. So, find your spot in one of these. And, they're not all looking terrific. So Wells Fargo, there's a lot of controversy about some of the ethics about how they're running their business. So it's underperformed. And, Goldman is coming around. I've mentioned to you in several videos how this process of bottoming here has been going on, and some of the things it should do. And this has a lot of potential if it can get through this area here. So we'll be watching for that next week to take a position in that. So good trading, everyone. We'll talk tomorrow.